You're still watching Morning at NTV. I'm Arnold Sagawa. It's exactly 11 minutes past 8 a.m. Time to talk prisons. No, you're not going to prison. We do have Dr. Adrian Juko. He's the Executive Director of Human Rights Awareness and Protection Forum to just walk us through some of the measures that have been taken by our dear government to control the spread of COVID-19. It's not just about all of you on lockdown. There are other people who are in lockdown before this lockdown. Dr. Juko.
Yes.
How are you doing today?
Fine, how are you doing?
Good. So, yes, the prison service tried to cop COVID-19, also reacting. There's been a lot of talk, even before the pandemic, about overcrowding in the prisons. Was this just a reactionary kind of action, or was it long overdue?
I think it was long overdue. If you look at the statistics, Uganda's prisons are actually overcrowded. So if you have so many people in one place, and if you look at the president's measures on COVID-19, they were about decongesting places. That's why we closed schools. That's why we closed bars and other places. So if prisons remain with a huge population, what does that mean for COVID-19? What does that mean if someone who is infected with COVID-19 is in prison? So prisoners are treated usually, if they are overcrowded, that makes it easy to spread COVID-19. So for me, I think the measures to decongest prisons have been long overdue. Of course, we would appreciate the efforts of the prisons authorities, but also of the Attorney General and the President of pardoning about 833 prisoners. That's a very good thing, but is that enough? The number of prisoners we have in jail versus the number that has been released. The prisons authorities recommended over 2,000 people to be released, and the President pardoned about 833. That's a much less number. But also let's talk about that's outflow. Let's talk about inflow. How many people are coming into prisons at the same time? How many people are getting detained right now because of COVID-19? The numbers are again in 2,000. Okay. So by the time we had a presidential directive on the presidential pardon, we had about 2,000 people who are being detained at various police stations and also going to prison. But
Dr. Juko, isn't that now a problem when you address the inflow? Isn't that now a problem of the judiciary as it is, because they are not processing people fast enough? You know, we're talking all this remote kind of stuff and doing stuff on Zoom and Skypes, yet, you know, you can still hear all the judges showing up at 10 a.m.
That's true a bit, but again, I'll also talk about, before I go to the judiciary, I'll talk about the police, the presidential directives. So if we have presidential directives about curfew, about a few things, distributing food here and there, what does that actually mean if police continues to arrest people for violating the presidential directives? Right now, we have 19 of our clients in prison because of doing something negligent, like to spread the infection of disease. What they did was to stay in a house. There are 23 people in a house, and that was enough for the police to arrest them under the charge of doing a negligent act. So if you pick up such people, they have now spent a month in prison. And all our efforts as lawyers to get access to them have been denied by the prisons authorities, saying, well, because of COVID-19, we cannot let you into prison. So for me, I would first of all blame the police. Why do they arrest so many people because of presidential directives? If it's about decongestion, why do you arrest every single person you come across? I like the new measures, the kind of way the police is doing it these days. For example, if they find you riding a motorbike beyond 5 p.m., they detain the motorbike and not the person. That's kind of an alternative, rather than arresting people, dumping them in prisons. On Friday, I was going past Buganda Road Court. I found the whole yard full of prisoners. People have been detained. I think they came in from CPS. The whole yard full of people seated body to body. And we're talking about COVID-19, and we're doing that. Now we'll go to the judiciary. The question you asked about the judiciary has its own issues. The judiciary decided to make themselves a non-essential service provider during COVID-19. As soon as the president issued directives on COVID-19, the chief justice issued his own and said, well, of course, I'm not going to operate with a very skeleton staff. We're not going to be working full-time because of decongestion. You know, for me, and he said we're only going to be handling bail applications and then pleas and also certificates of urgency. Now, if you announce that way, because the judiciary is the third is one of the three organs of state, the executive, parliament, and the judiciary. So if you declare yourself non-essential, then of course it wasn't surprising that the government came up and said, well, judiciary is non-essential, as well as lawyers and other people connected to the courts. But what are we talking about? We're talking about the right to a fair hearing. Now, the right to a fair hearing is a fundamental right. It's a non-derogable right. You can't violate it even in times of an emergency. And right now in Uganda, we have no state of emergency declared. You can't touch it.
Dr. Juko,
Yes.
do you have a sticker on your car?
On my legs, maybe I have a stick on my legs.
So
I can
you're not
move on
driving?
foot to come here,
So
but
you're
no
not
stick on
driving?
my car. We made an application to the Ministry of Works and Transport for a stick to help us in our legal aid service provision, because we are legal aid service providers as lawyers. And you know the answer? They just looked at the documents and threw them aside. No one gave us anything. Up to now, we can't move. We cannot access our clients who are detained in different places.
Well, it might. I never thought I would say this, but this might be a good time to be a journalist, because we actually do have a lot of stickers right here at Nation Media.
If you give us some stickers, I can tell you the judiciary.
But
don't
now
have
that's another
stickers.
crime, Doctor. You know that. That's now, that would be impersonation or something. But going back to the prisons. 2,000 were recommended, over 2,000, and 833. One might argue that, you know, this was a case by case. They look at Dr. Juko, they look at Arnold, and they say, you know what, Dr. Juko is good. He can be among the 833. Reviewing this on a case by case basis,
Right.
don't you think they had the right to admittance or even exit, as opposed to us looking at this from an overview from this outside kind of spectrum?
No, absolutely. For me, I think anything that reduces a prison sentence is good enough. As in anything that decongest prisons, anything that reduces a prison. I know we love punishing people. They have committed crimes, yes. But some of these crimes are being idle and disorderly, being rogue and vagabond, being a common nuisance, doing something like a spread infection of disease, that is walking on the street, being in a house. So some of these people are actually their own petty offenses. And it's important for us to emphasize the point on petty offenses. People who commit small crimes, things punishable by less than 1 year's imprisonment, shouldn't be in detention. There must be other alternatives.
But now let's address a bigger issue, which might actually fall on your side of the coin, which is these people are not well represented. Because if you're telling me that is the state actually representing these people well? Because some of the crimes that you're mentioning, being idle and disorderly, clearly that doesn't guarantee someone to go to the zero prison, let alone this get very, very far. I'm no lawyer, but I would think that.
Absolutely.
So is our state attorneys actually not performing? Because that is what leads to the numbers binging and growing exponentially and leading to what you're saying, where close to so many people filling the Buganda Road court.
Let me give you the anatomy of a petty offense. Someone is picked up from the streets for selling bananas. No lawyer, absolutely. You know that for sure. They are picked up, and because the police knows these are poor people, they can't even afford to pay the bribes that the police would need sometimes. They pick them up like grasshoppers, dump them. We've seen these stories. Dump them on a police truck, take them to court, take them to the police station. They spend there a number of days, and then this file is sent to the state attorney, who also sits and says, "Oh, right, what is this?" and then simply sanctions it. And then some of the things that state attorneys have sanctioned in this country, you look at them and laugh. Then they send them over to the magistrate, who also says, "Oh, who are these people? Why do we care?" They plead guilty, because what do? They tell you if you plead guilty, you get a smaller sentence. They plead guilty and go to jail.
Dr. Juko,
That's
I'm
the
no
typical case.
lawyer, but I need to protect my job. We are in a lockdown, and at this rate, I might not have a job. First of all, if anyone is listening from out there, this is an abstract case, what he just described. It's very abstract. It has never happened. So people are being laid off. So they might come for me and say, "You guys
You should take the sacrifice."
Yes. No. So that for me is one side of the coin. The mere fact that state attorneys are not really present.
Yes.
And there have been unconfirmed reports. Again, these are unconfirmed reports that state attorneys at times connive with other parties.
Yes.
For cases to disappear and that kind of thing. And this is, for me, what leads to chunks and chunks and chunks of cases rushing to judges. Don't get me started on the few judges that we have in the country.
I know, absolutely.
Moving on to still on the prison side, the restrictions to prison visits, like what you just explained earlier on, is this justified, or is it fair enough to say one can visit if maybe they do have a certificate saying that they're negative?
Well,
I know that's a far cry.
I'll give you first of all a factual story. This concerns my own clients I told you about, the 23 who were arrested and 19 of them were sent to prison. So we tried to go there, they are detained in Kitalia prison, the new fancy prison, Kitalia. So we went to Kitalia, and then the OC told us, well, we don't have them in detention, So we went asking where they are. We went to Kabasada prison. Then when we were there, we called the OC of Kitari again, and he said, well, I have the 19 in here, but you can't access them. We told him, we are the lawyers. He's like, no, you can't access. Then we wrote a letter to the Commissioner General of Prisons. You know what they responded to us? They told us, you cannot access your clients because of COVID-19. Wait, be patient, okay? These people have been there for a month. Be patient. We want to prepare better applications for them. We want to go and represent them, and their case was coming up. It came up on 28th of April, and we are not able to access them. On 28th of April, we went to court and spent there the whole day. No magistrate, no prosecutor, no prisoners. In other words, their hearing date passed. Now their new hearing date is on 12th of May. So what we did is to file a case challenging the refusal by the prison authorities to allow us access to our clients, because that's the right to fair hearing, which you cannot derogate. How can I prepare for my hearing if I don't meet my lawyers? That's something that's right now pending before court. The court already issued us with a certificate of urgency to go ahead and proceed with this case. So the point we're trying to make here is that you cannot limit the right to access lawyers. Now, what you can do, and we all understand COVID-19, as prisons, there are other alternatives. What are these? Social distancing. For example, we are 2 meters, more than 2 meters apart, me and you right here. So if we want to talk to our clients, they can do social distancing, 4 meters, we don't care. We can do the glasses I see in American films. You talk through a glass and a telephone on this side of the glass. You can also call. You can also, basically, there are so many ways the prisons can use to do social distancing in the time of COVID-19. You cannot say no access to lawyers. Be patient. Let us violate your rights as you are patient. No. The right to fair hearing is non-derogable. You cannot violate it as we are waiting. So that's the point about prisons. They have alternatives. They should use them. They can't say no access until things get better. When are they getting better? Which appointment do you have with COVID-19? When is it ending?
Dr. Juko, this is getting quite interesting, because we might have to remember that there's a line that's very common in the country: order from above.
Right.
Now, when some of these people hear things like orders, maybe a presidential directive that is 9 miles ahead, well, above them, and this trickles down like 15, maybe the OC is also terrified. And this leads me to another question, which is the failure of institutions to actually perform. Yeah. Because if you know that the institution, which now is the judiciary, is performing, they would, first of all, not say that they're non-essential. Right. So is COVID-19 only bringing out the real symptoms of the real disease that we actually knew was a pandemic within us, even before this?
The Baganda have a saying that egiranga netonya. So we've just seen COVID-19 has just revealed Uganda.
This is a hailstorm. It's not just rain.
This is not just rain. This is much more than a hailstorm. Well, but again, we are looking at how our hearts have been constructed, and they're terrible. They are in a shaky form. So Uganda is really exposed for what it is. All the things that we've been covering up have now come out in the open in light of COVID-19. And this is what we are seeing right now. The judiciary, I think, took a nice break. It's like a break for them to go back home and sleep. People are being exposed every single day to COVID-19, including health workers, including you people who are journalists and you are moving around and covering stories. Why should the judiciary sleep? I've done a survey, not a survey, I've visited courts around Kampala at this time. I've spent this whole week and even part of last week in court. But something you said about judicial officers arriving late, not being there on certain days. They seem to like Wednesday and Friday for some reason to appear in court. And what does this mean for justice? And also they handle matters that they want, you know, a matter that is coming up and urgent. But bail applications, in my view, are a very urgent thing. These are people in prison for no reason. These are people in prison who are not yet convicted. Convicts, we understand. Remandees, we don't understand. We can't understand. I'm a remandee. I've not been convicted. The right to presumption of innocence. I'm innocent until proven guilty. Give me a chance to enjoy my freedom until you convict me. And this is something post should think about. Every time we think of sleeping at home, every time we think of not allowing people to access their lawyers, we should think about the fundamental rights.
Dr. Joko, let's touch the issue of prison conditions. Because on one end, yes, we've talked about some prescriptions, like maybe social distancing, maybe having remote hearings. We saw it with Dr. Stelanyas, which I would say was quite fun. It was a groundbreaker. It showed us that, you know what, this stuff can work where someone is a few miles away, you know, and I'm only saying that because of the technology. It can go forward with the technology. How bad are the prison conditions? Because we might be fighting social distancing and all these things on the outside, you not being able to access people in the prisons,
Right.
yet the conditions inside are dire to start with.
Of course they are. If you want to know how bad they are, the recent testimony, I think, is from Dr. Stianyas herself in her new book. That she wrote, the poems that she wrote when she was in prison. They describe the circumstances and the conditions in Luzira Women's Prison. Now I just won't want to think about the conditions in the main section of the prison.
No, can you give me a neutral ground? Let's say someone who's done a study of the sort, because me and you might be biased, or Dr. Stella Nyanzi or someone else who has been convicted in the prison, as opposed to maybe an independent body that comes up and has gone through prisons across the world or something of the sort. Do we have something of the sort?
There must be some, but I don't have one off head right now. But there's a number of studies that have been done on prison conditions in Uganda, and they're not absolutely the best that you can talk of. But even if they were, who needs to be in prison because of good conditions? I need my freedom. I need to stay home, not to be in prison, whether you are provided with a 24-inch television or not. So, and they are not. If you're giving me good food, and they are not. So the conditions we all know are bad enough, regardless of independent people doing their own researches. People have been there, they continue to be there. But what we want for us is freedom. I'm so praising the Hague cells, the cells at the Hague for the ICC. Well, however nice a cell is, the whole issue is about liberty and my freedom to be outside, more especially if I'm on remand. I haven't been convicted of a crime yet.
Are you impressed with the DPP, the new DPP who's incoming?
Not yet. I don't think she has done enough for me to be impressed or not to be impressed. I don't think I can judge her with a few cases that she has done yet.
With these cases, which ones are on top of your head?
The Zake case, for example, that's quite recent, and charges that were preferred against him. I have a feeling that I haven't seen much change from what has been happening before, and that seems to be also the culture in Uganda, that the heads can change, but nothing much changes in terms of how things get done. I don't see a new trend of new charges that have been, of sanction charges being things that have been looked at with scrutiny. The DPP has what we call the prosecutorial policy. And this policy guides them on what they can sanction and what they don't sanction. My experience with the DPP's office is that they usually sanction all sorts of things, provided you send them to them, they'll sign them. I've not seen that changing in the recent times. It's a good thing that we have a new DPP, but we can only hope that things get better, that she's given time to overhaul the whole institution, and we see things working better. But for now, not yet. Maybe it's too early to judge.
Dr. Juko, very briefly, before I let you go, some parting remarks. If you were the incoming DPP, Dr. Adrian Juko, what would you change? What would you not change?
The first thing I would change is to how we look, is following the prosecutorial policy. How we look, why we sanction certain cases to go to court. That helps people to be processed through the system much earlier. For petty offenses, small little things that shouldn't waste court's time and the time of the DPP, well, we wouldn't sanction them so that people are released and they go back home, especially in the time of COVID-19. If I came in during COVID-19, that's what I would start with. What do we sanction and what do we not? And then number two, I would put in place different prosecutorial policies for different people. People are not equal. They shouldn't be treated that way. There's that point of equality, but also there's formal equality and then substantive equality.
You're losing me on people are not equal.
Yes.
I could have thought, I just dropped my jaw there. What do you mean by that?
The point I'm trying to describe is the difference between formal equality and substantive equality. Formal equality is that all of us are equal. But if there's a short person and a tall person and they have to access to, maybe to sit on your seat, you have to adjust the seat. That means you have to accommodate people depending on their differences. That's why if you're a prosecutor also, you have to deal with people depending on their difference. You don't charge a rich person the same way you charge a poor person. And this is interesting. You have to look at conditions and circumstances. What are they being charged with? Is there vulnerability coming out of their own circumstances at home? Is someone beating curfew at night because they're looking for food to eat? Compared to someone like Arnold, who may have a car with a sticker, who is beating curfew because, well, he loves to tour the town at night. I'm looking for food and survival. So you have to be careful how you deal with both cases. They're different.
Dr. Juko, many thanks for making time to speak to us. That was Dr. Adrian Juko, the Executive Director for Human Rights Awareness and Protection Forum. For what it's worth, I always get onto a border to get to work. God knows you can see it on my shoes. But let's take a quick break. We'll be back with more Morning at NTV.